We're going to get started in just a moment. I understand there was a snafu with the coffee urns, so people are still getting their coffee, so we're going to start in just a few minutes. Okay.
Good morning or afternoon. I'm not sure what time it is. I'm Michelle McIntosh. I serve as UUFR's president of the board of directors. And on behalf of our board of directors, thank you for attending this town hall to review UUFR's proposed 5-year strategic plan. If you were unable to attend this town hall in person, we will conduct a Zoom town hall on Sunday, October 1st from 3 to 4 p.m. 2 years of intensive work by our board of directors, our congregation, and our lead minister have brought us to this stage of adopting our strategic plan. The congregation will vote on the proposed strategic plan at our congregational meeting on Sunday, November 12th after the service. We need a quorum of at least 90 members to hold a vote that day, so please plan to attend. Now I will turn the meeting over to Sandy Pierce, Chair of our Strategic Plan Task Force.
Good afternoon. I'm very proud to be a board member at UUFR and to have chaired this task force and worked with so many strong members of this congregation to get to this point. Next slide. These are the members of our task force. Some couldn't be here today because of illness, and some had to be out of town. Today, Russ Altcalt, Allison Horwitz, and I will be doing the review of the plan with you, but also on our team is Gisela Fleming, Jock Roth, Laura Dupre, and Phoenicia Squidway. This proposed 5-year strategic plan that this team is submitting is based on 2 years of hard work by the board of directors, by you, the congregation, by lay leaders, by special committees of the board and ministry teams. And I believe that the goals, objectives, and strategies in the plan are aspirational and forward-thinking. So they don't represent everything we are doing or everything we will ever do, but they do represent priorities for what we want to do together. Next slide. Oh, I love this image that we got from the web of the diversity of people holding ourselves up. Okay, next slide. So, where did the ideas for the strategic plan come from? They came from you. The Committee on Ministry hosted 9 visioning sessions and gathered initial ideas and concerns from the congregation. The Strategic Plan Task Force then hosted 11 congregational conversations to obtain feedback on a draft of the strategic plan. The 196 participants in the strategic planning process represent about 140 UUFR members who participated once or twice in our events. 30% of the membership of the congregation engaged in developing this plan. The Addressing Institutional Racism Board Committee and the Environmental Justice Ministry team contributed recommendations from work that they had been doing over a long period of time. Our team consolidated over 500 comments from the listening sessions into the first and now the proposed draft of the plan. Next slide. So today, you've got copies, I hope, of the plan. There are plenty. And we also are showing it on the screen. And what today's town hall is about is to give you the opportunity to ask questions or ask for clarification about basically the strategies that are in the plan. If you have a major concern, then you can voice that today, or you can talk to any of the board members or team members, or you can send an email. The congregation is going to be reviewing this plan every year, so it's not set in stone. It is meant to be a living document, and I think it is going to be a living document because we're incorporating it into the work of the board, the ministry committees, and the board committees, and all of the projects we're going to be doing over the next year. After each section is presented, then you will have an opportunity to come up and use the microphone so other people can hear you if you have a question. Do limit your responses to about 2 minutes in case there's more than one person that has a question. Next slide. Oh, no, that's the right slide. Okay. So I love reading this vision. It's very meaningful, and it comes from the values that you articulated during all of the listening sessions we held. Okay, sorry. UUFR aspires to be a loving community that is intentionally inclusive, spiritually nurturing, and committed to leading social justice. There are 6 big goals in the plan, and one is being welcoming to all who seek a religious community, as was mentioned this morning, and we say every morning when we light our chalice. We want to be open to new members, visitors, and we want to integrate people into the life of the church. We want to inspire our spirits. Many people come here because they are seeking connection to the mystery of life and the intangible goodness in our universe. We want to nurture connections at all stages. After all, most UUs come to this church because they want to feel connected to each other. We are going to champion social justice. This is another major reason that people come to UUFR, because they believe in putting justice into our world. And this term is very broad and includes all of the many ministry teams that we have, the Immigrant and Refugee Committee, the Food Security Team, addressing institutional racism and environmental justice. We want to communicate more effectively with each other in lots of ways, in ways that resonate with all members of all ages, some in person, some social media, our chalice, the website. And we want to have a dynamic campus. We have a beautiful campus, and we want it to be used well by members and others in the community, and we need a robust staff infrastructure to be able to accomplish all of the things we want to accomplish in the plan. Okay, next slide. So under the first goal and objective, these are the strategies that we think are important. We really want to focus on intercultural competence with historically marginalized people and show hospitality. We want to invite people to UUFR, training and equipping them, as Reverend James did this morning during our sermon and through the book that he has written. We want people to feel comfortable talking about being a UU. We want to continue to grow our church and expand our capacity, and so we want to try transitioning to 2 services, especially because of the growth in our children and youth program. Okay. Next slide. We want to, under the next objective, we want to guide people from being visitors to regular attendees. Happy to have you here today. And to lay leaders and mentors for people. We want to provide a clear way to have people be involved by having, as volunteers, by having a clear understanding of how to do that, job descriptions, and training. All right. Oh, I forgot to ask my questions. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask if there are questions about any of those things that people would like to ask or need clarification on.
Hello, everyone. It is still good morning for another 16 minutes. I'm Allison Hurwitz, and I would like you to go to the next slide, please, for Objective 3, which is to create partnerships with other Unitarian Universalist churches and diverse faith communities in North Carolina, and also with the greater UUA. So I'm going to share with you 4 strategies that we came up with all of your input. The first one is to communicate and engage with our ministers, our board members, our lay leaders, and congregants in the Triangle area congregations. Sorry?
We have to, I have to do this one.
Oh,
We have one more on this one.
oh, you do?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, y'all. The reason this is happening is kind of at the last minute. We have had several members of the task force not be able to come, have COVID or other things come up. So we're kind of switching roles around, and that's why this happened. So let me get back to this one. So this is still in goal 1. All right. create partnerships with other UU churches. So the strategies under this are that we want to have good relationships with board members and lay leaders and congregants in all the Triangle UU congregations. And we also want to be able to help serve small UU churches in the state who are not able to, they're having declining membership, and they need some opportunities for shared ministry. And we've already been doing that, and we want to continue to do that. We do want to have relationships with and partnerships with diverse faith communities in Wake County, and that is often happening through One Wake that we're working with now. And then another thing that was mentioned in the service this morning is we want to update the congregation about UUA developments and what's going to be going on next year and how we can have input into those. All right, any questions about that one?
Yeah, this is just a minor, I guess, a typo thing. The last two words in B should be shared ministry rather than share.
Okay.
And A is UU congregations, not the congregates in the Triangle area congregate. That's us, and then the third one is other congregations, right?
Good point.
The A is just other UU congregations? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And diverse faith communities. Yeah, other UUs, congregations, and other diverse, and
Okay.
other diverse faith
Okay.
communities. Yeah. So it would probably be a good idea for typos if you would just send an email or something, because I'm not probably going to write that down right this minute.
Sandy, can you get a little bit closer to the mic?
Yes, sorry. Any other questions? Okay. Now, Allison.
My turn? Okay. I am back with you to strategize. So, are we on the correct slide first? It should be slide number 10. I think so. Thanks, Kai. Okay, so under this objective, what we want to do, this objective says we want to ensure that our worship services provide diverse theological, spiritual, and cultural perspectives in many formats. And so in order to make that happen, we have these 5 strategies that we tried to condense from many, many strategies. The first one is to try to vary the content and formatting of our worship services so that they include spiritual messages about the relationship between Unitarian Universalism, other world religions, earth-centered practices, and other spiritually resonant traditions that we may want to incorporate. We want to energize our services. We want to make them really exciting and fun and fulfilling and rewarding for people by incorporating congregate participation, various forms of musical and artistic expression. Many of you maybe came to the service that Becky designed, that Sarah and I helped her with, that kind of thing where there's lots of participation, lots of sharing. We want to invigorate our services by incorporating lay-led and also outside speakers, not just from UU congregations, but perhaps from other faith traditions as well. We want to explore offering services that mix it up, maybe have a different format, maybe have different content, keep things enriching and inspiring, and reinventing ourselves as much as we can within the confines of our faith tradition. And then we want to invite lots of presenters and musicians, speakers from different backgrounds who offer their own unique cultural perspectives and their own traditions. And now we go to the next slide, slide number 11. Our second objective under this heading is to invigorate our faith formation and special ministry opportunities for children, youth, and adults. So we have 4 strategies under this heading. The first one is that we want to identify, develop, and offer stimulating classes for all ages, and offer small group discussions on many topics. And I personally have found so much benefit by attending some of these classes myself, but also my children absolutely love the classes here, and we've had some wonderful family discussions that were sparked by some of those classes. So it really has a lot of personal resonance for me. Also, expanding our OWL classes to the broader community. Again, that was extremely important in our family, and we know that it can be of great benefit to others. We want to initiate a college campus ministry, and that is in progress as we speak, but Charlie and I, my husband and I, were a product of a UU college campus ministry program. That's how we got very committed to being UUs when we were 19 years old. So it is a really important way that we can expand our faith and let people know that we're here and we're awesome. And then the last one is to encourage intercultural competence for all lay leaders. That means having an understanding of diverse points of view, perspective, cultures of origin, issues that come up in different communities, and just having some sensitivity and understanding around that. And as you can see, in parentheses, it says, see addressing the institutional racism report, which I do encourage you to take a look at. And does anyone have any questions for me? I see 2 hands.
Sure. I'm just curious if things like our chalice circles would be covered under Strategy A?
Yes. That was very succinct. I'm trying to be very directed. Yes. I see a question over here in the stage right back.
With the college campus ministry, I'm just wondering if you've considered doing the same thing. I don't know which college you have in mind, but Meredith is very close to here, and Meredith would be an easy place for students to get to us. They could even come on foot. So I hope that you'll consider Meredith.
Thank you. And does anyone want to comment on that? We don't need to, yeah. We're looking at all the surrounding schools, and I think that's something that we're gonna see a lot of growth in the next couple of years with that. I'm very excited and looking forward to seeing how it grows. Other questions? Yes.
This is sort of a general process question. You may not want to address it right now, but reading through the structure of this, you've got goals, objectives, and strategies, and at some point there will need to be outcome measures. When in the process is looking at outcome measures going to be something that happens?
Yeah, great question. So the board has adopted an implementation plan after the congregation votes for this in November. This plan is really not supposed to go in effect until next July, but the ideas are so great that things are already happening and being implemented now. Michelle, our board president, has asked Sarah, our vice president-elect, to kind of help the board stay on top of how things are being implemented during the year. Most of these things are, of course, going to be our minister and his staff. There are some things the board are going to do and that other committees will do. But Reverend James will get the opportunity after you adopt a plan to then work with his staff about implementation. And it is over 5 years. So we would just be picking a couple of, major things we can probably do each year. So once the plan is adopted, there will be some outcome measures, and the board will be overseeing that and reporting that back to the congregation annually about how we're doing on our plan. That was just always the the plan for developing it, to start kind of with the fiscal year. We could start it earlier, I guess, but it partly just depends on resources of staff to do things now. They've already developed goals for this year, so I'm not exactly sure about that.
Hi. Oh, this is so loud. Just because you brought up the board and I am fairly new, I just was interested to see how does the board reflect diversity, or what you're wanting your congregation to look like in the next 5 years?
Well, we have a board committee addressing institutional racism that has several reports and been doing a 2-year project about how UUFR can become more diverse in all of our leadership roles and our staff policies, and you'll see some of those later in the plan also. So that's an area that we are currently working on. It needs improvement, but it's one of our top priorities.
This is very loud. I was just going to ask, you say here on the last bullet, see the addressing institutional racism report. Is there a place where that's generally available to people to read? Is it on the?
Yeah, it's currently available for the membership on the website.
It's on the website.
Yeah, it's on the website. It's already been posted there, so all members can access it there.
Could we do a follow-up in the Chalice this week and just have it mentioned again of the link? Would that be helpful? To have the report mentioned in the Chalice this week?
We'll.
I mean, I can do it. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
No.
No. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I guess my main question is, all of this sounds wonderful. Is there a place on the website or somewhere that we can see what's available now? So are there classes currently? And I've heard about a lot of different ministries. Is there a place where we can look and see what ministries exist currently and how to reach folks that are involved in them?
If any of you stop by the visitor stand on almost any Sunday morning and pick up our newcomer guide, it lists each and every one of our ministry areas, ministry teams, and with links to the website. We ran out of copies this morning because Annie Wheelis, one of our staff members, had a family medical emergency. So they're not available this morning, but any other Sunday morning, those pamphlets are available at the visitor stand. If you go to the website, so that's all of our ministry teams. If you go to the website, there's a document called Who Does What. Just use the search button on the website. I know this is really counterintuitive, but if you just go to the website and go to the search box and type in what you want to find, it will show up. And there's a document called Who Does What, which lists all the members of the governance and board teams.
We're also sort of piloting a thing for the board members. people are new, or if you're not new but you're looking for ways to become more involved, please feel free to contact anyone on the board, and we're happy to sort of partner with you individually and talk to you about what we know about what's going on, or to just partner with you in learning more about what's going on, and really work with you individually to find the right spot for you at UUFR. So if you're on the board, will you just raise your hand real visibly? Yeah, and so that's another way to find your way in.
Okay, so now we are moving on to slide number 12. And that encompasses the goal of nurturing connections at all stages of life. We came up with 2 strategies under that objective, and the heading is that we're going to revitalize our pastoral care ministry to be proactive during life transitions. And the way that we're going to try to do that is to recruit staff and train volunteers to increase our level of care to members. As you saw this morning, we had that wonderful calling of those 3 new lay ministers. And I hope and believe that we're going to need a lot more because we're going to continue to grow. And we want to be able to offer that kind of loving care and listening ears to anyone who needs them. And then the second strategy is to increase our ministry to differently abled, aging, homebound members and those who are experiencing trauma. So not just to offer ministry to the people who can attend each week in person, but also to reach out beyond this building, these borders, and really help other people. And now we go to the next slide, slide number 13. Our second objective is to increase meaningful connections between people. Already this is extremely meaningful community to me, and I am very confident it is to all of you, since you came and took extra time to come to this meeting this morning, which we really appreciate. This afternoon, it is 12:02. So we had 4 strategies for that. We want to create additional small group discussion, like the Chalice Circle, somebody asked about that earlier, and support groups to help members to intentionally deepen their relationships during many different life stages. So when we did the listening groups, there was a lot of questions about different specific groups that we could maybe offer, like groups for singles or working parents, people who are divorced, people who are new parents, and others. There was a whole long list. So we want to be able to offer that and be very specific and intentional about it. We also want to increase the avenues for differently abled people to participate more meaningfully in the life of the congregation. We want to make sure that we're accessible, not just physically, but, emotionally, and that we're really welcoming. We make it easy for people to be involved. We want to develop intergenerational programs and activities that deepen our relationships. I'm sure a lot of you know about our Coming of Age program that pairs our youth with a mentor who is older and has some experience. That is an incredibly important program. I have been a Coming of Age mentor in the past, and I know how resonant that can be, that connection between the two. We want more of that. We want more senior involvement with our family ministry programs. We want to mix our ages and experiences together to create more fruitful connections within this community. And we want to facilitate online gatherings for those who live further away so that they can feel that they can meaningfully participate in our community. Does anyone want to ask a question on any of the objectives or strategies? How can I clarify? Or we clarify, all of us. Fantastic. Thank you. And Russ, yeah, you're up.
Okay, so we should be then on goal 4. Yes, this is the right slide. I'm going to talk to you about the social justice goals here. This is goal 4, and we have 3 different objectives for this goal, and I'll go over each one of those. And at the end, I'll ask, we'll save questions and requests for clarification until I get to the end, if that's okay. So, objective 1. This one is, if you know me, this is very near and dear to my heart. This is our environmental objectives and our response to the climate crisis here at UUFR. And our first strategy, yes, is very concrete. It is to set a goal for greenhouse gas emission reductions that accrue to our utility use on campus. That's what this is. It is confined, just so we understand, to our utility use, electricity, natural gas, and water. And we propose to reduce those emissions in alignment with the Paris Agreement of 2015. And I'm sure everyone here is aware of that. In our particular case, we are proposing a 50% reduction in our carbon footprint by 2030, and then to try to achieve net zero by 2050. And I can, before I move on from this one, I'll just let you know that 50% from what, relative to what? Well, in our case, it's going to be the year 2018, as opposed to the Paris Agreement is 2005. And the reason for that is really a fairly simple one. We just don't have the data that allows us to go back to 2005. We can't find the utility bills. They're gone. But we can find 2018, and we've done the full analysis, and we're already down 33%. So I think this is a very achievable goal, and we can discuss that more. So the next strategy then is to raise awareness and establish unity of purpose to fight climate change here within UUFR and extend that to our community. Basically, we just want everybody here to become a climate activist. How about that? And that's our strategy. The next one is to sustain our Green Sanctuary accreditation and keep it living. We've been a Green Sanctuary since 2013. And we are just now in the process of re-accrediting our status. And we're going to finish that this fall. We're ready to submit it to the UUA once the board is happy with it. But in the past, we've sometimes backslid a little bit, and we want to make sure that we tend this garden and keep up our commitments and not just be satisfied about what we've submitted to the UUA as a plan. And lastly, we want to incorporate environmental justice into all of our UUFR ministries. There are ramifications for environmental justice in our anti-racism ministry and LGBTQ plus efforts across the board, and vice versa. You know, there are anti-racism aspects to what we do in environmental justice. We want to keep that in mind and cross-fertilize. So it should be the next slide then. Thank you. This speaks to our broader social justice ministry, and that ministry runs on volunteers. So we want to recruit, retain, and support those volunteers, and support is a key word there, to try to avoid burning out some of our volunteers who carry such a great load here and do such great work. So that is our first strategy. We also want to increase opportunities for children and youth in social justice work. Inculcate them as they grow up here in UUFR and kind of make that some of their instincts, just as their parents hold. And lastly, we want to revitalize our support and advocacy for the LGBTQ plus community. We have a history of that here, and we want to make sure that we are keeping that in the front of our thoughts and efforts. Next slide. And this speaks again to developing a multicultural a community that dismantles racism. As was alluded to before, the AIR Committee commissioned an in-depth study and produced a report with several recommendations. What we should do here at UUFR to address institutional racism, and we want to make sure that we pay attention to those, act on those. And you'll see later on in some of our strategies that we hope to have done that. And then lastly, we want to create policies to ensure inclusion in our hiring and business practices and try to achieve diversity there. So that sums up goal 4, social justice. And so be happy to answer any questions that anyone has at this point on that.
Thank you. For objective 1B, so I had a question on how will you teach the congregation how to integrate environmental practices, so activism and practice as opposed to just activism, because sometimes people can be just a speaking point as opposed to actually being a practice in their life. I can pause to answer that question, or I can ask my next question, whichever you.
Well, let me give you at least one concrete response to that. I don't know if you've heard of the prayer chain for the earth that has been held here last couple of years, last couple of Octobers. That is an effort of Interfaith Creation Care of the Triangle, and UUFR has been the host and really one of the prime movers for that. And that we have tried to bring in folks from Southeast Raleigh, where they have been at the sharp end of the environmental injustice over the decades here in Raleigh, forcing BIPOC communities to basically set up shop and live in a floodplain. And that's an effort, that prayer chain, along with Reverend Jamon Taylor. He was a speaker there at that. And that's an example of the kind of thing we want to do to make sure that we are addressing those who are, the climate crisis is going to hit those that are least able to cope with it financially the hardest. Mm-hmm. And we want to recognize that and advocate for that as in what we're doing. Sandy?
So once the plan is adopted too, we will ask that each of the board committees and the ministry teams through the minister about how they can put this overall environmental justice kind of framework on the work they're already doing and come up with some of their own ideas. Like the food security ministry team has looked a lot at composting and the kinds of stuff that we do for feeding homeless people, how we do it, the materials we use, recycling. And I also love that the EJMT has been putting in the chalice every week some practical things that we can do individually and as a church together.
Thank you. And just to clarify, those are great, and I was also speaking for those in the congregation individually who may be transitioning into being more environmentally conscious. How do they integrate those practices within their own life? So I think that's great. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, my second question was objective 2B. I think that is wonderful, increasing the opportunity for children and youth to participate in social justice work. Mm-hmm. Just from my own experience, how are we integrating children within social groups, people of color, without it being, I'm helping you? So I'm sure you guys have discussed this, but I'm just curious on how are we going to integrate within other communities without us just being helping hands or some kind of like savior?
So let me talk just real specifics. One of the things that Dana does is we have a social justice council, and she meets with them quarterly, specifically talking about opportunities to further engage our children and youth in social justice activities. One of the new things that she has done this year is create social justice passports. So when children and youth attend a social justice activity, they get a stamp in their passport, and that's very encouraging. But I think you're asking a very specific question, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but how do we get involved? How do we discourage white savior complex? And that's grounded in our theology that all of our social justice work that we are doing, we are not doing this just to save others. We live in an interdependent world. We are doing this to save ourselves. What affects one person affects all of us. So that is how this is grounded in our theology, that we are not doing for, we are doing with. That is really grounded in our, for example, our participation in One Wake. We are not doing for other communities, we are doing with other communities.
Russ, I'm wondering if you could just say a few words to clarify what the UUA Green Sanctuary accreditation means.
Will do. So it's been ongoing for about the last 3 years or something like that. And what they ask you to do is first create a congregational profile. So what is your congregation? Describe it to us. What's your history? And that includes the the history of indigenous people on your land, that sort of thing. We did that a couple of years ago, submitted that to the UUA. And by the way, all of this is available. We have it on we don't have it on our website yet, but we should. And we've got it on the EJMT drive. And so, reach out to me if you'd like to see these things. So that was the first step. So the first step is to profile the congregation. The second, which we completed last year, was the opportunity assessment, they call it. Basically, look around at everything you can do to reach the goals of the Green Sanctuary and these carbon reduction targets among them, and describe what that is. And we did. We looked at the HVAC infrastructure here, what we can do, in terms of advocacy and all sorts of stuff like that. So that was put together last year, submitted. Both of those were accepted. Then after the opportunity assessment, the UUA expects an action plan. So now what are you going to do? And we have just finished that up, and it's with the board, and the board will review it. And if the board is satisfied, we're going to submit that to the UUA. And I'm pretty confident, given our relationship we have, that it's going to be accepted. But that's not the end anymore. That used to be the end. And and you do some kind of a final report. But I think it's a good change that the GS 2030 group, the UUA now, they want regular reports from us each year, or as we accomplish each thing. So what is going on? Because, for our lifetimes, the climate fight is never going to stop. And we can't rest on, what we've said in an action plan 5 years ago. Okay.
So when I was downstairs at the Farm Bill table, someone named Bob, who had a mask on and didn't have a name tag on, came up to me and said he couldn't attend this meeting, but he wanted me to speak for him. And so this, in a way, addresses what the first question asker just did a few minutes ago. In addition to what can be done here at this site for the climate, what can we each individually be doing in our households? And for example, my husband was impressed by what you did with the HVAC system, so when we had to replace ours, we followed the example of what UUFR did. And so I think that I don't know if this is something for the congregation, I mean, for the whatever this is called, this is the strategic plan, or if this is just for EJMT, but people want to know what they can do at home, and various steps of first you can do this and then you can move to this, and perhaps just really spelled out. I think that might be what she was referring to in her question. So yeah, so I just wanted to speak for Bob and share that also.
Thanks. My response to that is simply, like I say, this is ongoing. We have things in the chalice each week about things we could do. Reverend James preached a sermon on it a couple of months ago as to how you can change things in your own life, and this is what we need to do. We need to just change our thinking about every decision we make as to how it might impact the climate, and therefore our children, our grandchildren.
So I just want to speak to a couple of the points that were brought up about how we're incorporating, supporting diverse communities, and without turning into, a whole white hero complex. And our congregation has been offering a Living the Pledge Against Racism workshop for the last, I don't know how many years now. We've put almost 300, if not just over 300 people through it. And we're now expanding that offering to include the children's programming as well. So in that offering and in that programming, we focus on how to be an appropriate ally and how to help other organizations in this type of work, and not try to come in and be the rescuers or be off on our own tangent. We are working on
that. I came in late, and so forgive me if this is out of context or out of order. This congregation signed a resolution opposing the death penalty some time ago, and I don't see criminal justice anywhere in our current activities. There are 2 of us in this congregation who stand vigil in front of Central Prison every Monday around the year, rain, shine, sleet, boiling hot, whatever. We're about to celebrate World Against the Death Penalty Day. It's a global event on October 10th. We just celebrated 17 years since the last execution in North Carolina. It's a growing, important issue, and I just wondered if there's any place in our social justice movement for it.
So one of the things we mentioned at the beginning is that this strategic plan is not a comprehensive plan. It doesn't include everything we're currently doing that is really important, or even some new things that we may figure out over the next 5 years. These are just some priorities. So all the important social justice efforts that we are doing, we didn't include food security ministry in here either, even though that's a major project that we do. So yes, all of those efforts, will continue, with the interest of the congregation.
Well, if that's everything, thanks so much. And I think, Sandy, you're next.
Next slide. So the objectives under this, there's one objective under this goal with 3 strategies about communicating effectively. So you've heard a lot of talk this morning about the website and what's on it and how to find things. We want to make that easier, more accessible, more understandable, and to that end, there's already been some work on looking at a consultant that we would hire that would help improve that website. And the Committee on Ministry is holding communications they call them reflection and feedback sessions about communication. And so those are good opportunities in small groups to submit ideas, or you can submit ideas online or talk to any of us about specific things you can't find or that you want to find involving the website. We want to make sure that we've got adequate staff that are assigned to manage all forms of communication, since we've got lots of ways we need to be communicating. And we want to make sure that there are in-person opportunities for sharing and discussing information between all of us. Are there any questions about that objective? Yes.
Well, guys, I sat in on a lot of the original strategic planning committee discussions, and I listened to a lot of what people had to say, and I have to say, I feel like so much of what this congregation expressed is represented in this plan. And I personally am really grateful to the Committee on Ministry, to this task force, and to the board for so comprehensively representing what folks were talking about. Perhaps none more so than the website, which I'm sorry to say didn't have a lot of defenders, our current website. I just wanted to offer one quick point on the kind of the way this 1A is framed. And I'll save my specifics for the listening session, which I've already signed up for. Thank you for scheduling that. With accessibility and inclusionary language and ADA compliance, I think what happens by default is that people tend to set the bar a little low. And we tend to rely on website consultants to kind of help us set where the bar is. And often they set the bar very, very low. And I think where we need to push, especially with disability stuff, is a little bit more creatively, a little bit more beyond ADA compliance, which sets a rat basement, and away from the idea that inclusionary language is something that's stuck on there, and much more creative and forward thinking about how we signal comprehensively what we do, especially around disability issues and how we're set up so that people feel really welcomed and empowered to come. So I just put that out there. I feel like this language in 1A is a little narrow. I'd like to see us get away from ADA compliance and inclusionary language, and maybe think about hiring additional consultants who have some skill sets in communicating, inclusion in a broader sense. Thanks.
I've been among the different people who have updated the web and had it turned against us. And we need a committee of regular members to be working with the consultants, and we don't want it changed. We have changed so many times because one minister wanted it, another minister didn't want it. But we had 5 women who created the website one time, and it was torn away, deleted. So I really want to say permanency is important, and members are important. Thank you.
Hear, hear. I agree. Anything else?
I just want to add that possibly a website consultant is certainly important for this process, but even more important is realistic input from the people who use that website for different purposes. So in software design, what you do is you start with the users, and you get that input and you have them involved in testing what gets developed to say, does this work? Does it meet our needs? I'm concerned that this could be written off as just let's get a good consultant in here and let them do a little bit of listening, and then whammo, we have a new website. I'd like to see serious consideration of how other congregations have done this. I'm especially impressed was some aspects of Eno River and how easy it is to find and navigate through how that congregation is put together and how you do involvement. So I'm thinking this needs more input, and it needs, I know we've had some listening sessions on communication, but it needs that membership of some sort be part of that team as this is developed. I don't think it'll never change. I think it will change, but then the process should include how and when does this get evaluated, and how do subsequent changes, how are they addressed and implemented?
So now we should be on goal 6. There we go. Again, we have 3 objectives under this goal, and this goal relates to kind of the nuts and bolts of our campus and also the staff here, our permanent staff at UUFR. So objective 1 is to maintain beautiful and inviting facilities and grounds. First strategy is to develop a plan to maintain those buildings and grounds and increase accessibility for differently abled people. Our second strategy is to open our buildings and campus to serve the community, and we do that with the White Flag effort that we've had the last year or so, and we want to build on that. This is a resource for our community, what we have here. We share that. We want to make sure we have a safe physical and emotional environment here at UUFR. We don't want anyone to come here and feel threatened in any way. We want to look into a preschool program and support those who might need financial assistance to attend that preschool. And lastly, on this objective, we want to review our policy to do business with BIPOC-owned businesses and suppliers. This is another recommendation of the AIR Committee report. And we want to take heed of that and make sure that's in our policies. Next slide. Okay. As we execute this plan and as we grow, we may need to expand the UUFR staff to achieve these goals. So first we have to build the financial capacity to attract and retain that staff. We have to create a plan, a sustained plan to make sure that our staff has competitive salaries, and that is commensurate with really a church of this size, which is significant. And lastly, another AIR recommendation: create a written policy regarding staff hiring and a commitment to racial diversity. I think that's been a policy, but it now needs to be written down and committed to. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the correction. And next slide. And this is the last slide, everybody. And it's a simple one. Everything we talk about here at UUFR, you've heard this before, depends on money to some extent. And we've had good pledging campaigns here over the past few years. But really some of the most significant things that have enabled changes here at UUFR have been gifts beyond pledging, and some very significant bequests to UUFR. And we want to keep that in the front of our minds and try to encourage that and have people think about that as they plan their estates and so forth. And so any questions on this goal?
So this has come up in informal conversations with the nominating committee and probably other other leaders at UUFR. And I want to suggest
a possible edit to this where we would say the goal would be to create a dynamic campus and robust infrastructure at UFR, and then add another objective related to leadership development of lay leaders to help implement the strategic plan in all aspects of our congregational work. And I don't have any more specifics than that.
Okay. Thanks.
I just want to just stand up and thank you guys for what you did. This is a huge piece of work. And lastly, I ask you, I'm sure you know, what in this whole process, what was the most contentious issue, and how did you reach resolution on that issue? Because it's probably not going to go away, whatever it was.
Well, Chris, that's a great question, and it's way above my pay grade. So. Sandy?
Yes. As like in all of the planning efforts that UUFR has, there were extremes of opinions. And so what we had was, some people saying they wanted X done this way and some X this way. And so the best I can say about that is we tried for the compromise when we could. And during those conversations, we did try to talk about why something, might not work. So it's really hard for me to pick out a thing. Probably the issue where there was a lot of discussion about was the transitioning to 2 services. And I think those conversations help people understand that it is not just about parking. It is about growing our church and people being able to come on Sundays, even like this morning, how full that we were, so that there's room for us at services and room especially for the kids, which is a new thing that has recently happened where they're popping out of their spaces. So I'm feeling pretty good actually about where we are in terms of controversy. I think people probably see this plan as there's something in it for everyone, but there's some things people aren't as crazy about,
My one comment is that probably most of the discussion was not which goals, but the level of detail, because these are high-level goals, and there's some people who wanted to include a lot more detail, but this is kind of like planning a road trip across the country. You may decide you're going to take that route. You might decide we're going to try to stop in this state on this day and this state on this day, but hopefully we're not going to decide these are the 47 restaurants we're going to eat at, and these are the exact time that we're going to stop for bathroom breaks. There are some people who wanted to include that level of detail, and what we tried to do is keep it at a high enough level to provide some flexibility, but also to make sure that we identified what our highest priorities were.
No, I don't think there are any more comments. Thank you all for attending today. If you have more questions, you can email them to 2029taskforce@uufr.org. We are so proud of this plan that we have created together. And we need your vote on November 12th at our congregational meeting. Please plan to attend and urge others to attend. We are moving forward together. This meeting is adjourned.